Well, good morning. How is everybody today? Hey, I'm Sue from Sewing and Slippers with Sue. My name is Sue Pelland, and I love teaching applique. Quilters who want to applique don't need to do hand applique techniques any longer unless you want to. There are so many other ways to do applique that are faster, easier, and a whole lot more fun. Today, I'm going to be working on the sea glass pattern from Talk of the Town. I do have that pattern up on my other screen, and I want to be able to share that with you so you can see what I'm working on. A couple of weeks ago, I decided to print out that pattern because I've admired it for years, and it's such an easy project to do with rotary cut applique. So I've been getting my fabrics fused, and one thing that happens when I fuse my fabric, sometimes I get a little bit of fusible on my iron. So we're going to be cleaning irons today. We're going to be getting fabrics ready for this beautiful fused applique quilt, and I'll even start cutting some of the 8-inch leaves that we're going to use for this quilt. So I have set up another camera so you'll be able to see what I'm doing, and that camera is right over my workstation. I also got back into my stash of old irons, and I found an old iron that was really dirty. So we're going to be able to talk about cleaning irons today and some products that work really well for that. Plus, I'm going to be showing you that Leaves Galore tool and how that can be used to make this quilt so easily. So if you're here with me, go ahead and let me know that you're hearing me. Also, if you could leave a comment with your name. I can't see your names here on StreamYard. I know that you're watching on Facebook and you can see everybody's names, but I can't see them here. So please leave me a comment with your name. I see Mary Pop is here. Good morning. And another Facebook user, but I don't know who you are, said good morning as well. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started with this sea glass quilt. So let me find I want to find my setting where I can show you. Let's see if I can show you the, yeah, I'm not sure how to do that. My goodness. I wanted to show you the screen where I'm seeing the sea glass quilt. And oh, good. Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate that. Debbie West, good morning from Cape Cod. Okay, so I was looking to see if I could share my screen with you, and it doesn't seem that I'm going to be able to do that. So the sea glass quilt, you can find it from Talk of the Town, and I'm going to be making the lap quilt size, which is 58 inches by 68 inches. Now, my printer didn't work very well, so my version is very, very light. But it's just these rings of 8-inch leaves. Super, super easy on a white background. Now, you can get this pattern from Talk of the Town on Etsy. So if you want to make this pattern also, go ahead and grab the pattern from Etsy. There is a pattern for all quilt sizes. I decided to just grab the lap quilt size, and I printed that out because it's a PDF pattern. And I knew I was only going to make this quilt once. So I decided to just print out the lap quilt size. And in that lap quilt size, there is a pattern for the leaf that she used to make this quilt. Now, I don't know the designer's name. I just know that she's from Talk of the Town. And yep, I'm just looking to see. Yeah, no, I'm just looking to see if her name is on the pattern, and I don't see it. So if anybody knows what her name is from Talk of the Town, or you want to go look that up for me, let me know in the comments who made this pattern, because I just love it. It's a very simple pattern, and it works perfectly for our rotary cut applique techniques. So what do I mean by rotary cut applique? Well, you can rotary cut your applique shapes with the fusible already on the back of the fabric to make this quilt super easy. We're going to be able to cut these melon shapes or these leaf shapes up to 12 to 16 at a time. So looking at my fabric yardage list, for all those different petals, I'm going to need 4 different fabrics. I'm going to need a half a yard of dark, half a yard of medium dark, 1 yard of medium, and 1 yard of light. So I can't wait to show you. I can't wait to show you my workstation where I have all those fabrics laid out. So sorry, I just saw that Bee left me a message here. She said she finally made it today. Her eyes are getting better. That's awesome, Bee. Bee went on, underwent some a treatment for what is that called? Macular degeneration. So I'm so excited that Bee is going to be able to see beautifully again and be able to make some of these gorgeous quilts with us. Okay, so in the pattern, there was this template. And with my Leaves Galore templates, you can see that that leaf is going to be a little bit smaller, okay? I'm not going to worry myself with that because in the pattern, the leaves are quite close together. I can just put a little bit more space between those leaves, get the same effect, and make this in a fraction of the time. So let's go ahead and just draw how big my 8-inch leaf is in comparison to this leaf, so that you can see the difference. So I'm just going to outline that with my black marker so you can see the difference in the size. My guess is there's going to be hardly any difference at all in the overall visual appeal of this quilt when I make it with the smaller leaf size. So I think that's going to work out just great. So that's my 8-inch leaf using the Grand Leaves Galore tool. Now, the other thing that she does include in her pattern, which is really helpful, there's a little inch scale down here. So you'll be able to see if your printer printed this out at the right size. Now, I know Bee was having problems printing some of my patterns out at the right size. So, what I want to do, I'm going to have to add this little inch diagram here down in a corner of the pattern. And that way you'll be able to see that my printer printed this the exact right size. 2 inches is 2 inches. And that's a great way to double check before you start working with a pattern. So I love that suggestion, and I'm going to start doing that with my patterns. Okay, so we want to cut out this 8-inch leaf size. And the way that she would have had you do this is to trace this pattern. So in my world, I would do this on a piece of template plastic, trace that with that permanent marker, cut that out with scissors, and then trace it onto the back of my fused fabric over and over and over and over again until I get all of the leaves for that quilt. Well, I'm going to do mine a little bit differently than in the instructions. But first, I wanted to show you the fabrics that I'm going to be using. I've decided to use this soft white couture cotton from Michael Miller. I believe that's a Michael Miller product. I love the couture cotton because it's a really fine fabric, a really fine weave. It's very, very soft and it's super smooth. I used to use Kona cotton, and Kona has a little bit more texture to it. You can really see the fibers more. You can see the yarns more. It doesn't have as fine of a texture. So you'll see little gaps, or you'll see the weave of the fabric much more than on the couture cotton. So the couture cotton is now my fabric of choice. Now in the pattern, she suggests that you use 90-inch wide fabric. because your lap size quilt is 58 by 68. Well, I don't have 90-inch fabric, but she does suggest you do that so you don't get a seam across the middle of your quilt. Well, I don't mind having seams in my quilt. It just doesn't bother me all that much on the body of the quilt, but I probably would put my seams here and here. I would put them, I would put a full width of fabric here, and then I'd split the second width and sew it top and bottom so that seam isn't dead center and it's not as obvious. So that's one suggestion I can make for you if you don't have 90-inch wide fabric in the fabric you want for your background. Now, for my backgrounds, I often use a white, and this is a modern quilt. That white or that soft white is going to be a good choice for this modern quilt, especially with all these beautiful sea glass fabrics that I've chosen. So she said to use a dark, a medium dark, a medium, and a light. Now, I didn't go really light on my light. You know what? She didn't either. I'm looking up at her quilt and hers is quite bright. But this is one of my favorite fabrics. I bought this fabric a couple of years ago and I have been saving it for a special quilt. And I think this will be perfectly appropriate. So this morning, I cut a yard of this fabric and I fused 1 yard of that fabric because that's what I needed for that light color piece. And as I was doing my fusing, and I'm going to move this along a little bit so that you can watch me doing some fusing. As I was doing my fusing, I exaggerated some of the problems that you might have when you're fusing. So this piece right here is already fused. I'm going to go ahead and use that piece. I took all these fabrics out of my stash, and some are fused and some are not. So I'm going to need to fuse up this piece of fabric right here. And I want to talk to you about some of the problems that you can encounter when you're fusing. First thing is I want to fuse on a nice big pressing board. This pressing board is not very big. This is a small cut and press from June Taylor. I use it just for my demonstrations. I don't normally work on such a small pressing board. I have a big board out on the other side of my studio, and I fuse that entire 1 yard piece by, I cut it into 1 yard, 36 inches by the 40 inches or 44, depending on the width of the fabric. And I just kept laying out my Misty Fuse on that fabric until I had the whole thing covered. Now the Misty Fuse comes 12 inches wide. So if I have a piece of fabric that's 12 inches wide, it works beautifully. So what I could have done for fusing that yard of fabric is I could take the 36 inches, divide that into thirds, and have 3 12-inch pieces that I need to fuse. And so that's the way I'm doing it here. Now, I didn't do that when I fused the entire yard because I wanted to see what would happen doing that entire yard as one piece. And it worked out okay, but I was actually intending to get fusible on my iron so that I can show you how to clean the iron. So here, I'm using this little tiny board, and so I've got more fabric than I do pressing sheet. So this is one of the tricky things that can happen if you don't have multiple pressing sheets. So I would fold this sheet up, and look, some of that fabric is sticking out the end, and it has fusible on it, and that fusible is not the exact right size. So the fusible is going to end up on my board. So I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to use the large size pressing sheet, and that is the Fat Goddess sheet. And that fat goddess sheet is made by Misty Fuse. Well, I am lucky enough to have several of these goddess sheets. So I'm going to turn the fabric around so it fits beautifully on the sheet, even though it's a little bit bigger than my ironing surface. And I'm going to cover this over with another pressing sheet. Now, normally I clean off my sheet with a kitchen scrubby before I use it. I'm going to clean this sheet before my iron touches it, and I'm going to clean this sheet before I put my fabric pretty side down on that sheet to make sure no fusible web gets on the iron. But today I want to get some fusible on my iron so that I can show you how to clean it. So I've been pressing with this iron, and look at that mess on the bottom. I've really worked hard to get it really messy for you. So I'm going to continue to press this. Now, a little bit of water just came out of this iron. The only time I use water in my iron is when I'm cleaning it. So I'm going to show you that later. So there is a little bit of water in my iron today. Normally that's not the case. So when I turned that over, I got water all over this pressing sheet. And all that does is it takes longer to press because that water is not going to go through that sheet. So I'm actually boiling away the water on the surface of the sheet. So you don't want to use water or steam at this point. All right, so the point here is you probably already know how to press your fabrics with Misty Fuse. However, I love to show you some of the things that can go wrong. Now, when you have a pressing sheet like this, I've got a rounded corner right here. If I keep this rounded corner and I hold the sheet lengthwise, so it's longer this way and shorter this way, if I keep that rounded corner in my bottom right-hand corner, then I'm always using the same side of the sheet when it's on top. If I unfuse this fabric here, let's see. If I take this sheet, I'm not even going to bother unfusing. If I took this sheet and now I want to use this as my bottom sheet, okay? And if there's any fusible web on the back here from this previous pressing, if I put it down here with this bottom corner in my right-hand corner, the way I always do, then all that fusible that's still on here from this last pressing, I see a lot of excess fusible on there, that's going to end up on my ironing board. So you don't want to be using these sheets willy-nilly. You really want to use the same sheet on the bottom and clean that one and use the same sheet on the top all the time. So I can tell these sheets apart because I've got a little oil stain up here on this one, and there's a little slit in it right here, but normally you can't tell these sheets apart. So how are you going to tell the difference between your two sheets? Your top sheet, what I would do, I'd actually do this on the bottom sheet. I wait until my sheet is a little bit older. When it starts being not as good of a Teflon surface, when it's not as nonstick as it should be, just cut a little straight corner in one corner, and then you'll know that that's your bottom sheet. Your bottom sheet, you're still going to put it with the rounded corner here in the bottom, but if you have this little cut corner, you'll know that that's your bottom sheet. So it's never going to get flipped over. So you're going to clean that sheet, put this one pretty side down. Okay, and now my top sheet is still my top sheet. If I put that curve in my bottom right-hand corner, then I'm using the same side of the sheet every time. That's the only side that's going to touch the fusible. So when I'm done ironing, okay, I pull this off. I just peeled off my fabric. Now I need to clean this sheet. The bottom side of that sheet could have some fusible web on it. Well, I'm counting on that. I'm going to get this iron a little bit dirty too. Oh, yeah, I already started with that one. I want to get this iron a little bit dirty too, because I want to show you what happens when you have a dirty iron. And I'm just picking up some of that fusible on the bottom of my iron. What a mess, but it's a good thing to be able to show you what to do when that happens. So look at that messy iron there. We're going to clean that right off so it won't be a problem. So any leftover fusible, let's take that off now. I don't want to keep getting my iron dirty. I'm just doing that for an illustration. Now, the other time you might get your iron dirty is once you have your fusible on your fabric. If you have fusible that sticks out the edges, see that little bit of fusible sticking out the edge right there? I like to trim that off. I'm going to trim that off with my rotary cutter because if I store this fabric for any length of time, say I cut some leaves, I've got some left over, and I throw it in a bin. When I take it out of that bin, I might need to iron it again. So all the fusible sticking out that edge is going to get on my iron when I iron this again. Now, when I do iron, I need to iron on an applique pressing sheet, but I don't always put it between the sheets like I do when I'm first fusing. If I put it between the sheets, it's not going to be an issue because I'm protecting my work surface and protecting my iron. But if you just pull this out of your stash and you say, oh yeah, I just need to iron a little wrinkle out of here, and you do this, you're going to get all that fusible on your iron. So you can trim off the fusible on the edge. And here is another thing that can happen when you fuse. So all of that fusible that's stuck on the bottom of my iron, when I went to iron my fabric, some of that fusible came off on the fabric. Now you'll want to notice that right away. You don't want to leave that on the fabric. If you notice it right away, you can grab your kitchen scrubby. Now I do include a kitchen scrubby in all of my Notions bundles. It's just a plain old one that you can get from the dollar store, and it works perfectly fine. This is a crocheted one that a friend made for me, and they both work fine. What I'm going to do is just get rid of that fusible that landed on my fabric. Oftentimes what happens is it's not so much the fusible itself, it's the fusible that has lint in it. So it's not that those were big globs of fusible, but they were little pieces of fusible with some lint stuck to it. And when you rub that with your what is that called? Your kitchen scrubby, sometimes you can get that off the fabric. If you have really ironed it well, you've really mushed that fusible back into the fabric, then you might not be able to get it off. And there's a few little pieces up here that I'm struggling with. Luckily, it's right on the edge of the fabric, but you know what? Look at that. I used my fingernail and I was able to get that off with my fingernail. So you can absolutely use your kitchen scrubby to clean up your fabric if you use a dirty iron on your fabric and you get fusible on the fabric. And there we go again. I just dumped water onto my piece because I keep turning this iron over to show you the bottom, and it has just a little bit of water in it. So let me talk to you about why we need water in our iron in order to clean up this fabric, in order to clean up this iron. So let's talk about cleaning our iron now. And what I didn't grab, and I should have grabbed, was a terry cloth towel. So I would be using a terry cloth towel on my work surface because I don't want to use my pressing sheets. When you use a pressing sheet, you're going to end up getting this oil or these cleaners that we're going to use for our iron. When they get on the pressing sheet, it will kind of ruin them. So you don't want to ruin your pressing sheets. Those are very valuable tools. So instead, we're going to use some leftover fabric. We can use some leftover fabric. Generally, I use a terry cloth towel. But sometimes I don't want to run upstairs and get a terry cloth towel or paper towel, so I'll just use leftover scraps of fabric. Now, the first thing I'm going to do with my iron is I'm going to rub that iron over the clean fabric. And using a white fabric is nice because you can see how much junk comes off from the bottom of your iron. Okay, so that's the first thing to do, is get off as much as you can. And that usually takes off a lot of the lint, but it usually doesn't take off a lot of the fusible. Then the next thing you can do, if you have a hard surface, now this pressing surface is not hard, but I do have one on my my big board because it's made out of plywood and it's just got fabric covering over it. So if I've got a surface here with an edge, I can kind of scrape that fabric off on the edge, or scrape that fusible off on the edge like that. You see how much of it came off when I was on the edge? And that's on a soft edge. It's not even a nice hard plywood edge. So look at this. I've cleaned off most of the gunk from the bottom of my iron, but I want to get it all perfectly clean. And you can see that there's a lot of gunk inside here where that little foot comes up. Now, if you don't have one of those irons where that little foot comes up, maybe you have an iron that looks like this. This is an old-fashioned, really, really heavy. This is called the Black & Decker Classic iron. Look how dirty that one is. I'm definitely going to need to clean that one. Now, this iron just has a steel sole plate, so I've stopped using it because it's harder to clean. But I want to give you some of the techniques to clean an old-fashioned iron versus this ceramic sole plate iron. The ceramic sole plate iron often will get cleaned just by doing this. If you catch your fusible right away, you can often get all of the fusible off just by doing this, because that sole plate is very, very shiny and it releases the fusible very, very easily. But what if you can't get all of that fusible off your iron? Or what if you have an iron like this that doesn't have that ceramic sole plate? Well, that's when I go to a couple of different products. And the first thing you can do is use I'm looking for my white magic eraser. It was here a moment ago and I've lost it. A white magic eraser is just one of those products that you can get from the grocery store that will help you clean your iron. And I just take that white magic eraser, I wet it with water, I put it on my pressing surface, but on a few terry cloth towels, all folded up. So you've got a lot of thickness there of the terry cloth towel. You're going to grab that magic eraser, and I just spray it with water. And then I use the magic eraser to clean the bottom of the iron. Just iron over that magic eraser. If you're not familiar with that magic eraser, it's the one that takes marks off your walls. It does a really good job taking off fusible from the bottom of the iron. So I start there. If the magic eraser doesn't work, then I'll go to these iron cleaning sheets from Bonash. These have a chemical in them. They're not just a regular dryer sheet. These have a chemical in them that melts when you put your iron on it. So it's a chemical iron cleaner. And these sheets are pretty small. They come, let's see, I think they're 16 in a package. I'm sorry, 10 sheets in a package. And I take these sheets and I usually cut them into strips, or I just cut them in half, or you can use the whole thing. It depends on how bad your iron is. So I'm going to use a little half of a sheet. I've used this one before, so the chemical probably is all melted out of it. But let's go ahead and try that again, because, you know, I like to be frugal. I like to use up every last little bit of all of these products. and see if that takes the fusible off the bottom of the iron. I'm looking at this spot right here. There's a big black spot right there, and that's a tricky one. That's a really burnt on bit, and it's not even coming off with that chemical cleaner. So I'm going to use a brand new one. Remember, I had already used this one, so it's time to throw that one away. I'm going to use this one right here and see if it will take off that melt on, burnt on bit that's on the bottom of this iron. My guess is that that burnt on bit is not going to come off. You saw how all of the rest of it came off, but that burnt on little bit right there is just not coming off. So I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to grab my kitchen skewer. That kitchen skewer, or better yet, a popsicle stick. You can use that and scrape off the bottom of your iron. I am using the sheet, and that's going to help me get in all the little nooks and crannies. If I have fusible inside around this little foot here, I'm going to use the kitchen skewer to get in and around all the little bits, to get in all the steam holes. I want to make sure that I am getting all of the goop out of the bottom of that iron, and you can see it right there. Yeah. So another thing that you want to do is clean the edges of your iron. I see some really black caked on goop right there on the edge of my iron. So I'm going to do the same thing. Oftentimes a popsicle stick will do a little bit better job because you've got more surface area on that popsicle stick to rub over the edges of your iron. So you're doing this process while your iron is hot, okay? So you have to be very, very careful not to burn yourself when you're doing this process. And that's why I like to use the kitchen skewer or a popsicle stick to get in and around the whole sole plate, all the way around the bottom, all the way around that tip, all across the bottom, and into those little steam holes. Now, when you're going into the steam holes, you may be loosening up some of that mess that was on the bottom of your iron. You could even be pushing it into the steam holes. So that's why the last step here is to use your steamer. And you're going to let out as much steam as you can. So I have to add a little bit of water to that reservoir. And I'm going to put as much steam out as I can to get any little black specks out of those steam holes. Look at that. There's all kinds of little black specks in that steam hole. So I would want to add some more water to this one. Just squirt, squirt, squirt that steam. Push, push, push that steam. Put it on the highest steam setting and get as much steam out of those steam holes as you can. And that's going to force any little specks of black fusible out of those steam holes. So there you go. That's how we're going to clean your iron. Now, if you have some really, really resistant bits here, and I found one down here that I just can't get off no matter what I do, I'm not getting that one off, you can use a different chemical iron cleaner that's even a bit stronger. Okay, that stronger iron cleaner would work beautifully on this iron. The sheets here don't work well on an iron that has a steel sole plate. Most of this would not come off with this type of a cleaner. So I would go through the same process. I would start with the fabric and just rub it on the fabric. Then I'd use the magic eraser with water and rub it over that. Then I would use a full sheet, a full sheet so that I can get all the way across the iron with the chemical cleaner. But I know that that one is going to require something serious. So in my bag of tricks, once again, in my Notions bundle, we have the Bowen iron cleaner. Now the Bowen iron cleaner I can't show you because this has to be done outside or under your range hood. This is like a little tube of lipstick. You take off the tube cover, you rub this product on the bottom of a warm iron. You don't have to go super hot with this, but you want it at least halfway up. Now, I like to put it here around 5. I don't need to go all the way to 7. And I don't want this product that's now melting on the bottom of my iron to land here on my arm. So I'm going to take a dishcloth and I'm going to put that over my arm. And I might even take a a pot holder, and hold on to this with a pot holder, one of the nice ones that goes all the way up your arm like this, or a dishcloth works fine. Just make sure your hand is covered in both directions. You don't want any fingers exposed, where when you put this on the bottom, this product is going to get hot. It could run off the edge if you're not flat, and that's going to burn your arm. You don't want burns on your arm from this product. So make sure that you melt a little bit on the bottom, let it pool on the bottom there. Then use your kitchen skewer, and you're going to scrape up any of these black spots into that pool of melted product. That is going to dissolve those black dots and pull them off the bottom of your iron. You can see this kitchen skewer is going to take a while because I have to get every little spot. That's why I do recommend a popsicle stick. It's a little bit bigger and you can get a little bit more done easier. Then you're going to take that iron and you're going to iron it off on top of your terry cloth towels. You're going to spray it. You're going to get all of that goop off the bottom of your iron, and you're going to rub it again. You're going to keep doing that over and over and over again until this iron is clean. Now, this one is particularly bad, but I've seen worse. I've gone into class situations where these are the types of irons they have given me to work with. So I absolutely will continue to bring this product to any workshop I go to, because when they give me an iron to work with in a workshop that looks like this, you know you might ruin the pretty side of your project. And we certainly don't want to do that. Okay, let me come back to you for a moment here, and let's see. Okay, I want to see if we have any questions about cleaning the iron first. And then if we don't have any questions about cleaning the iron, we've got plenty of time and I can start cutting some of those leaves. Well, good morning, everybody. If you are on Facebook and you're leaving a comment, please put your name in the comment. I see good morning, everyone, from another Facebook user. I don't see any questions about cleaning the iron, and that's great. So I think I explained things well enough so that you can go and grab those products and use those on your iron. Now I've got my fused fabric. I'm going to have several fused fabrics, and I want to show you how we're going to cut out those 8-inch leaves from these beautiful fabrics. So back to the workstation. I need to do a little cleanup here. So let me walk you through what we're going to do to cut our 8-inch leaves. So first of all, let's get rid of all of these irons. I don't want to be burning myself here as I'm demonstrating. So let's get rid of this iron over here. Let's turn this one off here. And we're going to look at that pattern and see what we need to do to cut our leaves for that pattern. Now, of course, she's going to have you tracing this pattern and cutting that out with scissors. But you know what? We don't want to do that. We want to use our Leaves Galore tool, and we're going to use the Leaves Galore tool to cut out these shapes instead. So print off or copy the applique pattern at 100%, trace 98 petals onto fusible web and rough cut. Well, I don't do that either. So what she's saying is that she would take a paper-backed fusible web like this one right here. This is Wonder Fuse. And she would take this paperback fusible and she would trace this shape 98 times. And then she would rough cut around that shape. So then she can press that to her fabric, and then she can cut out the actual shape, and then she'll peel off the paper backing. So that's a lot of steps, right? We've got to trace onto the paper. We're going to rough cut once. We're going to fuse that onto your fabric. We're going to accurately cut, and then we're going to peel off the paper. Well, I think all of those steps just take too long. So let me show you how I'm going to cut out these 8-inch leaves. Now, I don't have too many fabrics fused yet. I didn't get as far on my fusing as I wish I had gotten this morning. But let me take at least a couple of fabrics that are fused, and we're going to layer those up to 4 layers at a time. Now, I love all these beautiful fabrics. I wished I had them fused and ready to go, but I ran out of time this morning. So let me just see what else I might have. I know I fused, oh, here it is. I fused the entire yard of this fabric. So if I need to cut an entire yard of fabric, I'm going to need some more of this table to do that. So I'm just tossing all my stuff over to the side here so I can get a bigger cutting mat up top here. And we can really dive into this 1 yard piece. So let me get rid of this tiny little cutting mat. Although I do love my little cutting mat, that's not the tool for this job. I'm going to show you the big boy here. This is the one that we're going to use for cutting a yard of fabric. It's a nice big cutting mat. So if you don't have a big cutting mat, it's just going to slow you down a little bit. You can absolutely do these techniques, but you're not going to be able to do them as quickly or as easily. So let me put my cutting mat down, and I'm going to do that full yard of fabric. Now, it doesn't matter which way I fold this. Let's think. If I fold it the long way, 36 inches, how many leaves will I get out of 36 inches? Well, I should be able to get 4 leaves out of 32 inches. So that seems like a pretty good way to cut. Oh, sorry, I moved my camera. Let's fix that. But what if I fold it the 40-inch way? Now, if I fold it the 40-inch way, it really depends on the actual measurement of the fabric. All fabrics can be a little bit different in this measurement right here. Some are going to be 40, some are going to be 42, up to 44 inches. So let's measure this one. We're at 20 plus. That's a good thing. So we've got 40 inches. That means we should be able to get 5 8-inch leaves across the fabric. 2 boxes upstairs. In the kitchen. Thanks. Okay, my son is heading over to see Joanne. Once again, I'm giving him instructions on what to bring Joanne so he can send out these products to my customers here. All right, so what we need is our 28 millimeter rotary cutter. If I tried to cut this with the large rotary cutter, it's not going to want to go around these corners right here. I'm going to move this into the center, and let me just turn off that that light so it's not glaring on my my tool. So if I want to cut 5 8-inch melons, I'm going to start with the A on the center fold of the fabric. If I start with the A on the center fold of the fabric, I'm going to get half of a melon here, which when I unfold it is going to be a full melon. And then I'm going to get an 8-inch melon here and an 8-inch melon up here. What I want to be sure of is that I go far enough over so my entire tool is on the fabric. So I've got maybe a 1/4 of an inch gap right here, and that's perfect. I also have Grace True Grips on the back of my tools. So I'm going to put the A right on the fold. That's going to give me 1 melon. And then I've got 2 layers here, 2 layers here. That's 5 melons at a time. But you know what? I've got all this fabric fused as well. I want to cut this in the fastest way possible. So let me go ahead and slide this one on top. And these are just some odd pieces that I already had fused. I'm going to put this one over here as well. Now I won't be able to get 5 melons out of these pieces, but I should be able to get several. So I might have to slide this up once I place my tool on the fabric, because I'm going to get a 1/2 of a melon here. I don't really want to start cutting that fabric yet when I'm only going to get 1/2 of a melon. But if I start here, I'm going to get a full melon here and a full melon here. So that looks perfect. All right, let's go ahead and start cutting. With my 28mm rotary cutter, I'm going to cut away from me. So I'm standing here at the bottom of the table. I like to have a table where I can move around. So the fabric fits better this way on my table. So that's the way I'm cutting. Now, normally I would be cutting over here and cutting away from myself this way. That didn't fit with this big, long ruler. So I just moved around the table so that I can cut comfortably. Now, what I need to do is I need to slide this tool up by 1 full leaf shape. Now, the dash line on the tool is going to fall right over the line that I've just cut. But I'm not going to be able to cut this end right here with my 1/2 melon. So I'll save that and cut that in a little bit. So I want to be very, very careful here. I'm going to start cutting right at the end of the tool. I'm not going to just cut back, because I want that to be a perfect little melon shape right here. So I'm just going to start right at the end of the tool and start cutting there. Now my dash line matches up all the way up. So I know I'm going to get 8-inch melons here, and I'm going to get 8-inch melons here. And then I can finish up this last one by putting the tool right where I've just cut, and then making sure the A is on the fold. I know that this melon is going to be just the right size. So here we go. Let's just make any adjustments we need, and then I can cut this last melon as well. So instead of cutting our melons with scissors one at a time, I'm able to get a whole stack of melons done at once. And I'm going to need 98 of these. So instead of using all of these scraps, I do want to use up my scraps, but I'm going to start fusing the yardage. I want to start fusing the 1 yard pieces. Then I can stack up I can stack up 2 1 yard pieces. That'll be 4 layers at a time because they're folded in half. I'll be able to cut 2 1 yard pieces at a time. Now, my next set of leaves is going to go right here. That's going to utilize the fabric beautifully for this cut. So I have the A down here. The end of the tool is close to the fold. I'm going just a hair away from the fold. And then I'm going to make sure that that tool edge is all on my fabric. And I'm going to cut up once, all the way up on that fabric, because now I'm going to get a melon at the very top. Once again, I'm going to need to make 2 cuts because this is a big, wide piece of fabric. And my tool is only 24 inches wide. So I'm going to get these 2 melons cut together here. So the dash line follows the line that I've just cut. So I'm going to get this one and this one. And then I'm going to need to move the tool here to get my last melon out of that piece. So follow your guideline here on the edge of the piece that you've just cut. Make sure that it matches up here as well with that dash line. The dash line falls right over what I've just cut, and then it matches up back here once again. Make any adjustments you need to, and there's another set of melons. So I'm getting these melons. Sometimes I get partial melons on the ends of my fabrics. That's okay. I can use those in another project. I only need full melons for this project. So I'm going to continue to count these melons until I have 98. Now I want to make sure that I've got the right number of lights, mediums, and darks. So I'm going to start making these piles of my fabrics, and I'm going to show you this in just a minute. I want to start making piles of my fabrics, and then I'm going to get into the minute detail in her pattern where she's going to tell me exactly how many of each of these melons I need in each color category. Now, I said that we had some partial melons, and I thought we could use these in a different project. But what I just thought of is that that pattern has several melons that go off the edges. Hey, look what I just found. There's my magic eraser I was looking for before. Now I know my pattern didn't print out very well, and I tried to share on the screen with you, the one that I'm looking at on the screen. But you're going to see up top here that some of these melons go right off the top. So maybe that's the place for a partial melon. So we don't want to throw away any of these pieces until we've started to lay them out on our design wall. And out of her 98 melons, how many of those are partial? Let's count them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 from that blue. So we're going to count all the way around the quilt and see how many are partials. And we're going to write that down in our instructions so we don't overcut. We don't need to cut more than we need when we already have partial shapes that are ready to go. So I think that this is going to be a beautiful project. I've really been dying to dive into this one, but I've got a lot of other projects going on at the same time. So I hated to dive into this one until I was ready to cut and sew. But today, when I knew I wanted to show you how to clean your iron, I needed to fuse a lot of fabric in order to get my iron dirty enough so that I could show you how to clean it. So I chose this project this morning. I got up early so I could start fusing the fabric and try to do it in the worst way possible to get my iron as dirty as possible in order to show you how to clean it. So that was kind of fun. I'm glad to see you here, Becky. Beautiful fabrics. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here with you on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. I hope that you've learned something today. And if you have, then maybe you'll want to work with me on some of these projects together. I have a group called Ahead of the Curve, and in our Ahead of the Curve, it's a membership. It's a monthly membership, and in that membership, you get to take a workshop with me every month. And we also have monthly sit and sew days. We have contests. We have all kinds of fun things that happen, as well as loads of information on our customer portal where you can watch demonstrations like this anytime you want. So we are having Applique School in the middle of July. So come to Applique School, and during Applique School, I will give you some hints and tricks for hand applique, fusible applique, and glue applique. You can sign up for Applique School right on my website. It's right on the banner right now, and that website is SuePellandDesigns.com. applique.com. So if you got value out of today and you want to learn more about my applique techniques, come to Sue Pelland Designs. I'm going to try to spell that right, designs.com. You can sign up for Applique School and you can find out what Ahead of the Curve membership is all about. I would love to see you there. I'd love to help you choose the right method of applique for you. If this fusible applique technique looked fast and fun to you, I'd love to show you how to do it. So join us for Applique School. That is July 10, 11, and 12. And I will look forward to seeing you there. So thanks for joining me today on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. Come join me every month in our Ahead of the Curve membership, and we can make some beautiful quilts together. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.